Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is claim. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we can use this verb. The first way you might hear the verb claim used is to mean to state that something is the case. We might think of it to state something in a way that makes it sound like a fact, but you are making that statement typically without providing proof. A second way you might hear the verb claim used is to mean to assert that someone has gained or achieved something. There's a good chance if you're in the United States and following the election, you're going to hear the phrase that a candidate has claimed victory, right? So they're saying we have achieved the most votes. A third way you might hear the verb claim used is to mean to formally request or demand something. So you might hear this verb used in reference to the law or legal cases. A fourth way to use the verb claim is to make a demand for money under the terms of an insurance policy. In some ways, this is a bit connected to the third definition in that we have a formal request, and many insurance companies have a formal way to demand money because your car has suffered some damage, your house has suffered damage, or something else that you have insured. A fifth way you might hear the verb claim used is to mean to cause the loss of a person's life. Unfortunately, this is kind of a sad meaning, but I'll show you some examples of this particular usage a little later. You should know that claim is a regular verb. To make the progressive tense, we're just going to add ing to form claiming. The past tense and participle forms of this verb are made by adding ed. The verb claim ends in a voiced M sound, so the ed is going to make a D sound. Claimed, claimed. You might be happy to know I don't have any additional meanings to speak with you about today. I couldn't really find any evidence of phrasal verbs that are used with claim. So nothing here to practice. So that's going to allow us to focus on some different verb tenses using claim. Today we'll practice the simple past, the present perfect, and the simple future. Let's start with the simple past tense. We are using this verb tense to describe an action that was completed at some definite point in the past. So it's possible in a sentence you might see evidence of that past time period, words like yesterday, last week, last year, or even a specific date. Sometimes it's just implied as part of conversation or a part of the paragraph that you're reading. To make an affirmative simple past tense sentence, we're going to use that ed form of the verb. And this is true no matter what the subject is. Let's look at an example. The earthquake in Turkey claimed over 70 lives. And unfortunately, this connects back to that last meaning, referencing the loss of life, referencing death. And unfortunately, this is a true statement. In the past few days, there was a very powerful earthquake on the coast of Turkey. And unfortunately, many people have died. Let's now look at a negative simple past tense sentence. To make the negative simple past tense, we are going to use did not and then the base verb. So in the negative, no ed form of the verb. You might hear native speakers use the contraction didn't and then the base verb. It's going to have the same meaning, and you can always say or speak in a way that feels comfortable for you. So let's look at an example. He didn't claim any dependents on his last tax return. This is another way you'll hear the verb claim used in the United States. It's in reference to our taxes and people claiming things that can result in deductions or a reduction of taxable income. And that's what the sentence is in reference to. So if it's not totally understandable, don't worry. We might revisit the subject of taxes and verbs related to tax next spring when we get closer to a filing deadline. Now let's look at making a yes or no question in the simple past tense. To do this, we're going to start with did, then we'll have our subject, and then the base verb. Here's an example sentence. Did they claim unemployment this past spring? So again, this goes back to that idea of making a demand. It is part of our system of laws here in the United States. If we all work, we contribute to this fund, and so when we aren't able to work, we are able to draw upon these funds. Now let's take a look at present perfect. To make this verb tense, we're going to use either have or has, and then the past tense form, the ed form of our verb. Here, because claim is a regular verb, past tense and the participle are the same thing. So, and you might remember we're using present perfect to talk about an action that started in the past and continues into the present, or an action that was completed at some indefinite time in the past tense. So here we don't know. We don't have that specific mention of yesterday, last week, last year. Now let's look at an affirmative sentence. The president has claimed that mail-in ballots are subject to more fraud. Now I would say that this usage of claim ties back more to our first definition of the verb. So offering something, a statement, and presenting it like a fact, but not having evidence, not having proof to support that statement. So in case you're watching this outside the United States, there is no proof, there is no evidence that mail-in ballots are subject to more fraud than in-person voting. But this is something that has been discussed a great deal in the last few weeks leading up to the U.S. election. If I want to make a negative present perfect sentence, what I'm going to do is insert not after have or has. Again, you might hear native English speakers use the contractions haven't or hasn't. Here is an example sentence. Many people haven't claimed their stimulus checks. So again, due to the pandemic, there was stimulus payments that were offered to taxpayers and largely citizens here in the United States. And there are still a number of people for a variety of reasons who have not been able to claim or officially demand their stimulus funds. If I want to make a yes or no question in the present perfect, I'm going to start with have or has, then I'll have my subject, and then the participle form of the verb. Let's look at an example. Has COVID-19 claimed more than 230,000 lives? So again, this unfortunately goes back to the meaning of causing the loss of life, causing death. And you might wonder why I chose to use the present perfect, and unfortunately, it's sort of a sad reason, but the number of infections continue to increase here in the United States. We know that in many states, our hospitals are reaching capacity. They're not going to be able to take in more patients. And I think the sad fact is that COVID-19 will continue to claim more lives. So in many ways, this is an unfortunate activity that has started in the past and it continues into the present. Now let's take a look at simple future. Today we'll focus on using will to make the simple future. And the nice thing about will is in the affirmative, we're going to use will in our base verb to express an offer, a prediction. Some will often use it with plans as well. And that's true no matter what our subject is. So let's look at our first affirmative example. They will claim asylum at the border. Asylum has to do with a legal status, someone who doesn't feel safe in their home country and is asking for a safe place to reside. And so again, this goes back to this idea of sort of a legal demand. If I want to make a negative simple future sentence using will, I'm going to insert not after will, and then I'll have my base verb. You may hear native speakers use the contraction won't, and that's what I used in my example sentence. I won't claim to speak for all others. So here that goes back to the meaning more of assertion. Finally, if I want to make a yes or no question in the simple future using will, I will start with will, then I'll have my subject and then the base verb. Let's look at the example sentence. Will both political parties claim victory later today or early tomorrow? So this is another question that many Americans have been wondering about and asking about as Election Day is finally here. So now let's take a look at some words and phrases that are related to our verb claim. And the first one we're going to look at is the noun form of this word. So same spelling, exact same pronunciation. Just like our verb, this can have a couple different meanings as well. One possible meaning for claim is an assertion of the truth of something. But typically this assertion is disputed or it's in doubt, it's questioned, might be another way to think about it. So let's look at an example of this usage or definition in a sentence. They are investigating his claims of inappropriate behavior by management. So here someone has asserted that a person in management or maybe people have behaved inappropriately. And they are trying, and perhaps the management is disputing that. They're saying no. So again, they're going to gather evidence. They're going to gather proof to try and determine if the claim is true. A second meaning for claim as a noun is a demand or request for something considered to belong to someone. It's considered to be one's due, what is rightfully theirs. So let's look at an example of this usage. Many people have filed insurance claims after the derecho. So many of you know I live in Iowa in the Midwest, and the Midwest had a really powerful storm that caused a tremendous amount of damage in August. And now many people are dealing with insurance claims. So they are saying my property suffered this kind of damage, maybe to my roof, for some people their windows, etc., right? And they're asking the insurance companies to help pay for the repairs. Another related word is claimant. This is a noun, and this is referring to the person who's making a claim. And you might hear this word used in rather formal settings, so like in a court of law. So you'll see my note here. You'll hear claimant used in lawsuits. You might also hear it used if you are applying for some type of government benefit. So that might be like unemployment compensation or workers' compensation. Let's look at an example sentence. Claimants need to file the paperwork by the end of the month. Okay, so generally, this is a non-specific way to refer to someone. You might see this word in instructions to particular forms as well. The last thing we're going to talk about today is a phrase, claim to fame. And what it means is a reason for being noteworthy. Okay? Let's look at an example of this in a sentence. His claim to fame was appearing on a reality TV show. That feels like a lot of people's claim to fame now in 2020, after about 20 years of reality television. So, again, what the sentence is suggesting is that the reason people know of this person, maybe the reason they're slightly famous, right, is because of this one thing of being on a certain TV show. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.